Well, hello, and welcome to my situtory. My name's Jane, and this is the first time this year that I have been able to film outside in a situtory, which is a Scottish word for a kind of sheltered space that's partly outside. So this is a covered area that is on the back of my house. So welcome. I am here today to talk about some experiments that I have been doing around social media generally, about phone use really generally, but that have focused in on my use of Instagram, which turned out to be the most problematic of all of the apps for me. So I am a textile artist and I live in Scotland. And I also, I have a chronic illness, and maybe because of that, I really want to get the very best out of my life. So I run a series of experiments, trying to work out really what energizes me, what brings joy, what fills me up, and get more of that into my life. And also, what kind of brings me down or wastes time or clutters up my head. And then I'll get, try and crowd that out by putting more good things into my life. And this year, I am experimenting all around the idea of simplifying things. If you want to know more about this, there are other videos. You can also sign up to my newsletters, which kind of explain a bit more about it. So 3 months ago, maybe, I did a video where I said that I was going to be really trying to restrict my access to my phone. And at that point, it was really all about time. I had found myself starting to say to people, oh, I don't have time to do that. And I was getting kind of this feeling of always being a little bit behind, of not getting the things that I really wanted to do fitted in. And I know when that happens, it's never kind of an empirical, no, you have no time, even though I do have relatively few hours that I'm awake during the day. But I was saying it so often that I thought, I really need to take this in hand and find out if there's anything in my life which is using up time that I don't really want to do. And then it became very, very obvious that when I looked at my phone use stats, because, they send you every week, how long have you been on this phone per day? And I was up there at like 4 hours. It was absolutely ridiculous. I thought, well, that's it. I have allowed this thing in my pocket to seduce me into spending all of that ridiculous amount of time looking at my phone. If I can cut that down, then I'll have more time in my day, and all of this kind of feeling that I need to keep going, which is not good for me, will go. So, and I have explained all of this in a previous video if you want to watch that one, but I will do the basics here. What I did was I looked at a whole load of apps that really help you manage phone use, phone addiction, whatever. And most of these I found actually would just restrict the hours that you could use something. So you could set it so that you could only access Instagram, say, from 6 to 7 p.m. or 11 to 12. You could choose all of these things. You could set it all up yourself. Hi, Teasel. But it would be like a timetabled thing. And I found that did not work at all for me. My personality is such that if anybody tries to make me do something or stop me doing something or puts rules in place, I will do my best to break them. So could set all of this up, and as soon as one of these things came up saying I don't have access to whatever it was, I would just find a different way. I would go in through a web browser, or I would take cookies off, or something, you know, just so that I wasn't obeying the rules. So that didn't work very well. And then I found something called Screen Zen, which works in a slightly different way. You set up, you know, excuse me, the websites or apps that you have the problems with, and you decide how much time you want to spend on each, or whether you don't want to spend any time on it at all. And then when you go to look on your phone for the app, first of all, it's grayed out. So it's no longer bright and colourful and inviting. So you've got that first kind of, oh yeah, no, I'm meant to be doing something about my phone use. Then when you click on it, it says, is this important? Which is, you know, just another question. Had you decided this was important, Jane? And then if you click to go ahead and access it, it gives a 5-second delay. So it's no longer as easy. And you can set it up for how long you want it to be. And I looked at all of my phone use stats, and there were 3 things that were taking up most of that 4 hours. One was Vinted. So I just got rid of that off my phone. I don't need to be shopping for clothes all the time. Another one was Pinterest. And again, it's this infinite scroll. Just the idea that I was doing something when actually all I was doing was scrolling and letting ideas go past me. That was supposedly I was looking for knitting patterns. But, you know, it was certainly I was spending a lot more time than if I had just looked for a knitting pattern. And then the worst one was Instagram. So I got rid of Vinted and Pinterest from my phone completely. And Instagram, I decided that I would just restrict. So I restricted it to 5 minutes during the day. So 25 minutes is a lot of time, actually. But I thought, well, you know, that allows me to post a reel and reply to comments and all of this kind of thing. And that's what I did. And for 2 months, that is exactly what I did. I suddenly got back 90 minutes of every day just from Instagram, plus the Pinterest, plus the Vinted. And what it felt like is, you know, when the clocks go forward in the spring in the UK, sort of for British summertime, and all of that day, you're kind of just a little bit behind because you've somehow lost an hour. And then in the autumn here, clocks go back and you gain an hour, and all day you feel I'm really on top of life at the moment. Look at all the stuff I'm getting done. And in both instances, it seems to be more than just that hour, more than you would get by having slept in or got up early. Well, that is exactly what it felt like to have got rid of these apps. Suddenly, I just had more time, and I stopped rushing, and everything just seemed a little bit more easy. Then after 2 months, a really interesting thing happened, because after 2 months, I felt no draw to go onto Instagram. That addiction to the dopamine or whatever, the addiction to the idea that I might be missing out on things, all just disappeared. And I kind of went onto it less and less. I might check for messages. I kind of gradually stopped posting as much. I'd put up some stories, maybe of me drinking coffee, but nothing big. I thought, this is really, really interesting that I have, just by restricting this, stopped its pull on me. So the other thing that I noticed was that when I was going on Instagram, you know, and I thought, well, you know, I'll just go and check up on things, see what's happening out in the world. it seemed to have suddenly become really, really dull. I'm assuming that the content hadn't changed, but that I had. And I also noticed quite how many adverts there were. So for every 5 posts, whether that's stories or in my feed, there were 2 actual adverts. And there was one kind of, you might like this person, which was usually a business doing some kind of adverty kind of thing. Usually very smug. And then a couple of posts. And I thought, I would never in any place in life willingly go and just watch adverts, just scroll past advert after advert, most of them trying to pretend that they weren't adverts, trying to pretend that they were actually personal posts, just going on about whatever it was that they were wanting you to buy. I thought, this is not good. And then at about the same time as I was really thinking, this Instagram doesn't feel good. It brings me down. It stresses me. Even in this reduced form, I'm not getting anything from it. That was the week that I listened to the podcast by Wendy Suzuki, which I've talked about in a previous video, which is all about memory. And she was talking about social media and scrolling and how that affects your short-term memory and how it could be responsible for so many of the things that we think of as being either memory loss or some kind of ADHD kind of thing. You know, when you speak to people and they go, you know, I just can't seem to focus, and I'm thinking of getting myself tested for ADHD, and because it's terrible. I think a lot of that low level lack of focus, scattered thinking, starting new things and new things and new things, never finishing anything. All of these things that I have found creeping up on me over the last 3 or 4 years. I think a lot of that is actually tied to the phone scroll. So I listened to this podcast and I thought, you know, what I should do is I will just put up that I'm going on sabbatical from Instagram, and I just won't post, won't look at it. You know, it was clear by this point that I wasn't wanting to use it as a sort of like an interesting distraction, because it was just so dull and full of adverts. So I did that, and I walked away and I left. And at this point, and I should say, I'm not saying that I'm never going to go back on it. It's a sabbatical. All of these experiments are to try and see what happens, to try and see what it feels like, you know, to gather data, to come to conclusions, to make a decision at the end whether I continue or I don't. But I started this sabbatical, and there were 2 things in my head. And one was that it is possible that Instagram is essential for my business. You know, a lot of people found me through Instagram. A lot of people talked to me there. It could be that I was just about to make a incredibly stupid decision. So that was one fear. And the other was that I have a lot of people who I really, really like on Instagram, and would I just lose touch with them? And what was really interesting is this next month's thing. So I'm now just been on my sabbatical for a month, and it has made no difference to my website traffic coming from Instagram. Instagram's pretty bad anyway for links. I mean, you can put things on stories and so on, but it's not great because people can't see your post and immediately click through unless you're a really big Instagrammer. So it made no difference to my signups, to my web traffic, but it did make a difference to my newsletter signups. They went up. And I think that this may be because while I was giving this kind of 5 days a week story of my life, always kind of vaguely there, knew what I was doing kind of thing, on Instagram, people didn't need to sign up to my newsletter. They knew what I was doing. I would link if it was important or whatever. So they were just quite happy with me like this on their feed. And then when I wasn't there anymore, they would think, oh, I haven't heard from Jane for a month. Oh, she's not on Instagram. Oh, here is the link to sign up to her newsletter. So after the first week, started to get many more sign up to my newsletter, which is what I would much rather, because I can talk about bigger things there. I can talk about everything that we do. I can address proper issues. It's a bit more of a commitment. I always appreciate the privilege and the intimacy of somebody getting my email in their inbox. So they changed. And I thought it was quite interesting. The social thing is also interesting. I have a number of friends on Instagram. We'll message backwards and forwards on Instagram. It's quite easy. Everybody's always on Instagram. And I was really worried about losing some of those friends. But again, I found that lots of people kind of started emailing me or reaching out and wanting, phone number to send me something. My close friends just moved over to WhatsApp, and actually that works much, much better. So this is still an ongoing thing, because I am aware that I have built up really not close friends, but acquaintances, and that whole kind of almost small talk relationship with a lot of people. And I think that will be interesting as to how that goes. Some people have moved on to posting more on the Studio Club forum. The Studio Club is a community that I have. It's a paid for sort of creativity community, and it has a forum. And I noticed that some people who would normally have just sent me a DM on Instagram now posting in the forum, and that again I much prefer, because then we can have proper conversations and it's a community. And anyway, so this is a little bit ongoing. And then finally, and this is definitely an ongoing thing, because I'm not really sure, and I certainly don't want to sound smug or as though I'm shaming any other businesses. But if the mental health benefits that I seem to be getting from not being on any infinite scroll apps on my phone, if they continue, if this sense of ease, if the ability to focus more, to read deeply, or to actually start things and finish them, if this continues, and I am convinced that it is linked to these apps, I will not want to be encouraging anybody within my community to be on those apps, because I think that they will find that a lot of focus and engagement and just being more grounded may come if they got rid of them all. So, and that's a very difficult thing to say. And I know that there'll be lots of people going, I don't have a problem with Instagram. I love Instagram, or I love Pinterest, or I love whatever. And that's fine. You may have no problem with these things at all. But personally, and I think that it is because I'm quite an obsessive rabbit hole-y kind of person, but also because I like to reply to people. I like to engage with people. If somebody leaves a comment on something, I will reply to it. So I mean, if you look at my YouTube videos, every comment, I think, gets a reply. And that's part of the thing with me. So because of that, Instagram had kind of really reeled me in with that. But also I'm somebody who gets fatigued during the day. And I think that I had started to use all of these apps as a way of making myself think that I was busy, productive, whatever, even though I was really tired. And now I would either knit socks, which I find is possible, even when I'm tired, or I would properly rest and recover rather than getting sucked in to these things. So this is my experiment. And I think that I'm going to treat it as an experiment for another 3 months. And then I might let you know how it's working. And I'd love to know your views, because I'm certainly not saying this is the way to do it. But I am saying that for me, getting rid of all infinite scroll apps from my phone has made such a difference to just the ease and flow and rhythm of my life. And I shall see you next Friday, because it's absolutely glorious out there. I am going to go and sit in the garden and maybe do some weeding. And bye-bye.